Hi, I'm Congressman Kerry Bentivolio. The President has said that we don't have an immediate crisis in terms of debt. In fact, for the next 10 years, it's going to be in a sustainable place. Coming from the person who has presided over the largest increase of debt in our history, it's a pretty convenient statement to make. Could you imagine if our founding fathers had shared the President's outlook for the future? Just think of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, or Ben Franklin in the 1760s or 70s saying, "We don't have an immediate crisis. Over the next 10 years, our relationship with England is going to be in a sustainable place." It's pretty funny to think about. Luckily, the leaders of the American Revolution were forward-looking people. They worried about future generations and the problems they might face. That's why our Constitution's preamble explicitly states that it doesn't just secure liberty for just the founding generation, but also for posterity. Our out-of-control spending is a problem we need to control while we still can. World history has shown that a debt crisis is always followed by the loss of freedom. It's time for us to make a stand for posterity the way the founders did. Right now, we're spending more money to pay the interest on the debt than we do on education, homeland security, and transportation combined. And that's with interest rates at historical lows. A slight increase and we will be paying hundreds of billions more a year. Just imagine how many more teachers, firefighters, and policemen we could have if that money was going to the people instead of creditors. The President recognizes this. When he was a senator, getting ready to make a run for the White House, President Obama called those interest payments a significant tax on Americans. The total amount of revenue that the government takes in is $2.9 trillion. That is $1 million multiplied by $2.9 million. Our spending this year is around $3.75 trillion, or $1 million multiplied by $3.75 million. That's a lot of zeros. Let's take a second to talk about what that would mean for a typical American household budget by taking 8 zeros off of those two numbers. The federal government is doing the equivalent to taking in $29,000 and spending $37,500 a year. Could you imagine the trouble an ordinary person would get into if they were putting nearly 30% of their income on their credit card every year? Right now, the government is getting a special rate, like an introductory rate offer from Visa. We only pay the equivalent of $250 of interest on the debt that we've already accrued. And some think we should take out as much debt as possible because of that low interest rate. But we all know what happens if you keep adding to that credit card. The interest rates eventually go up. If that happens, our credit card payments will eat up more and more of our national income. If we continue on our current path, we will soon pay more on the interest on the debt than we do for the entire military. Today, we voted on a budget for fiscal year 2014, and it couldn't be more clear which party is more serious about making changes to protect future generations and which party wants to wait until a full-blown crisis before making any changes. When you examine the Democratic plan, it makes you realize why the Senate didn't pass a budget for 3 years. They were afraid of being embarrassed. Despite raising taxes by $1 trillion, their budget never balances. The closest it comes is running a $407 billion deficit in 2016, just in time for the next presidential election. It's time to get serious. Well, I wish it looked more like the Republican Study Committee's budget that balances in 4 years. I support the Republican budget introduced by Paul Ryan. It implements some sensible reforms, balances in 10 years, and does it all without a tax increase. The secret to American exceptionalism has always been our limited government. Runaway spending does the opposite of limiting government. Instead, it makes government boundless. Every American generation has left the country a little better off than they were given it, handing it to their sons and daughters with the hope that they would do the same for the generation that follows them. It's now our turn to pay it forward by getting back on the path to fiscal responsibility. It will help to restore our dynamic economy, creating jobs and careers that will sustain our nation for our children and for our grandchildren. God bless Michigan, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.